Hello, welcome to Business Week, the program that brings you top business stories that made the headlines during the course of the week, including special interviews, features, and market data. Welcome to the show. Well, here is the highlight of the biggest stories we tracked for you over the course of this week. On the local front, the National Bureau of Statistics, in its most recent report, covering internally generated revenue at state level for the fourth quarter and full year 2020, shows that the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory IGR figures hit 1.31 trillion naira in 2020 compared to 1.33 trillion naira recorded in 2019. The federal government also recorded 485.51 billion naira fiscal deficit in January this year, and that's according to the monthly economic report for January released by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The low revenue performance in the month was due to the decline in non-oil receipts following the lingering effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on business activities and the resultant shortfall in tax revenues. In the energy sector, the landing cost of petrol imported into Nigeria has jumped to 216 naira 31 kobo per litre on the back of the recent increase in global oil prices and the depreciation of the naira against the dollar. However, the group managing director of the NNPC says there will be no increase in the ex-depot price of petrol in the month of May as government still subsidizes petrol. And on the international front, Bitcoin, the world's biggest cryptocurrency, fell as much as 14% to $51,541 at the start of this week, reversing most of the big gains it made over the past week. And the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies are discussing downgrading next week's full-scale ministerial meeting. The OPEC Plus coalition, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia, may just go ahead with the meeting of its monitoring committee on April the 28th, rather than the full gathering that's currently also planned for that day. In the aviation sector, Emirates may need to also raise more cash this year, possibly through another equity injection from the Dubai government if demand for air travel does not pick up soon. Emirates lost about 12.6 billion dirhams, an equivalent of $3.4 billion in the first half of this year. And also this is looking at the equity which is gotten in the volume of $2 billion in the year 2020 from the Dubai government. And now Netflix Incorporation, in a fresh announcement, says slower production of TV shows and movies during the pandemic hurt subscriber growth in the first quarter of this year, sending shares of the world's largest streaming service down by as much as 11%. Roughly 3.98 million people signed up for Netflix from January through March this year, below the 6.25 million average projection of analysts surveyed by Refinitiv. It's now time to bring you our special packages on the show today. Now, yet again, reports from the Nigeria Customs Federal Operations Unit Zone A reveal seizures of explosives, cannabis sativa, tramadol, and other contraband items valued at more than 3.1 billion naira in 2 months. The command reveals that it is also prosecuting 9 suspects in relation to the smuggled goods. We now turn to our correspondent from the ports, Ifunanya Eze, who has the details in this report.
The current level of insecurity in the country is without doubt disturbing, which is why these impounded drums of calcium carbide explosives concealed with cassava is worrisome. The area controller, Usman Yahaya, says no import authorization document was provided at the point of interception.
Normally, anything like this must be covered proper. That is, there are rules and regulations covering this, as long as they are explosives. So they required end-user certificates, of which we are still investigating. Apart from these cassavas that is covering this one in this vehicle, they use another method again in covering the second vehicle.
Another major concern is the steady influx of cannabis sativa into the country, while banned pharmaceuticals like tramadol are still making inroads through the borders and the seaports. Though the Customs Service says intelligence tracking enabled the interception of this contraband, it however knows that the Ogun and Oyo border axes are major flashpoints for smuggling.
You can see this consignment is fully loaded with tramadol and of the highest milligram. And you can now see the danger of what a smuggler can do. This large quantity of Indian hemp is being intercepted in various places. And they all come from the borderland.
Also seized were 80 vehicles used as means of conveying bags of smuggled foreign parboiled rice between February and April. While these warehouses overflowing with more than 20,000 bags of 50 kg foreign parboiled rice are evidence of an illegal trade that is not abating. The Nigeria Customs Service maintains that enabling laws permit it to seize contraband goods and also effect the arrest and prosecution of smugglers.
And now moving on to the second report for today, where we shift our attention to the real sector of the economy. The Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria, SMEDEN, is seeking for better education on the relevance of intellectual property rights and boosting the value of the operations of the micro, small and medium enterprises sector. The agency made this against the backdrop of the theme of this year's Intellectual Property Day, which is also taking your ideas to the market. Lara Falayo reports.
MSMEs are often the driving forces behind many innovations, but their innovations and creative capacities aren't fully explored. This is because most of them lack adequate awareness of the intellectual property system. The Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria feels intellectual property is a key consideration in daily business decisions, as new products have continuous human innovation and creation.
This is a collective responsibility on all of us as Nigerians to ensure that MSMEs benefit from the intellectual property right so that they can protect their products as well as protect their services. As we said, this intellectual property mostly are intangible assets.
The agency sees an urgent need for MSMEs' collaboration with relevant intellectual property stakeholders. It also believes institutions with statutory functions in the administration of intellectual property rights should be more accessible to the business entities.
The MSME will need to be sensitized on the importance of the IP to enhancing the value of their enterprises. This will require collaboration with relevant stakeholders, media in particular. Relevant agencies with statutory functions in the administration of IP should be easily accessible by moving closer to the MSMEs.
Intellectual property exploration has been a source of technological and economic strength for developed and emerging economies. Legal protection of intellectual property prevents its infringement. It also instills trust and loyalty in customers as it provides entities with a distinct identity and image.
And with those reports, we now delve into the feature of the show today, bringing into perspective the real estate sector and the reality of just how difficult it is for the average Nigerian to gain access or acquire housing units as the current inflationary pressures in the country drives the prices of construction items higher. We have details of this conversation and much more coming up shortly after this break. Don't go anywhere. Many thanks for staying with us. Let's now deal with the crux of the matter for today's discussion. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, shelter is one of the basic needs of man and ranks next only to air, food, water, and even sleep. This underscores the importance of housing to the well-being of people. Now, the real estate sector in Nigeria struggled for decades, contributing less than an average of 7% to the GDP and fewer than 1% to employment. The National Housing Fund was established by the NHF Act of 1992 to mobilize funds that will facilitate the provision of affordable housing for Nigerians. But state governments so far have attempted to develop low housing schemes, but not much has been achieved. Fast forward to today, the housing problem seems to be getting worse. It's estimated that Nigeria currently has at least a deficit of about 20 million, and ironically, the cost of building a house in Nigeria is relatively higher, while the average income level is relatively lower compared to the global average. And joining me now via Skype to discuss the trends we have in the real estate sector, I have Kunle Adeyemi, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Homes Limited. Good to have you on the show today.
Thank you, sir. Once again, thank you for having me.
It is basic economics that prices are determined at the intersection of demand and supply, so going by the inflationary pressures that have continued to spike prices of cement, steel and other construction items. The dream of either government or private entities developing low-cost housing seems bleak. We've seen about 67% increase in price just this quarter, and the housing deficit is well over 20 million. What's your first reaction to the models of housing we have currently in Nigeria versus the pricing of construction materials?
The prevailing housing deficit is presumed to be 20 million, right? And with the prevailing hike in the construction materials, coupled with poor purchasing power, right, is a major challenge in our space and our real estate industry, particularly the construction sector. The fact that we have a deficit that is that huge, coupled with the high construction materials, it makes it a lot difficult for an individual to realize their aspiration of owning a home, right? Because the pricing policy that is not being regulated in the Nigerian industry, particularly in the real estate space, is a major challenge, and it was presumed some few years ago that about 3.5 million naira will be required to build an ideal home for an average family in Nigeria. But the deficit, which is on the increase at the moment, coupled with this, the price of construction materials that are not regulated, will make it difficult for an average Nigerian, coupled with the fact that the purchasing power has drastically reduced. So my reaction to this is making the realization or the actualization of the breach that real estate company like ours and some other developers intend to bridge that gap of the other deficit. Is making it difficult and unrealistic, because so much more is required to put up a home. So much more is required because of the construction materials that are gone on the skyrocket. I mean, so a lot of stuff is required.
And now, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, at least 700,000 new houses ought to be built yearly to close the current housing deficit. How do we bring down the prices irrespective of government or individual housing scheme efforts, and then dealing with the menace of substandard construction items?
Yeah, two things very quickly. Right now, about the price hike, particularly as related to how to deliver with a figure on the statistics you just mentioned. The developer will have to be deliberate about the construction, particularly about their building designs, the designs for the building. Our designs has to be done in such a way that is aesthetic is fine. I mean, lofty, great design. They are very nice. However, for the sake of the prevailing price, we have a demand. I mean, huge demand to meet. So every developer will have to be deliberate about the designs they are putting out if we are considering to solve the problem of mass housing. So we have to be deliberate about putting up a design. For example, if you're having a one bedroom, the one bedroom can have just a toilet and bath, where the consumer wants to have a one bedroom that have the room and suite and still have a visitor's toilet. Some of these things have cost implications. So we've got to be deliberate about coming up with creative designs that is economically friendly. And at the same time, our methodology, our construction methodology also have to be revamped. When you go to construction site, you see a whole lot of waste. Waste of building materials. You see cement, you see a lot of bricks, a lot of tiles. Reinforcement materials like iron, steels, and all that. So, a number of these stuff, we need to come up with a better methodology, construction methodology, that can reduce waste to the barest minimum, so we can maximize the materials we have and deliver the product at a reasonable price. Now, about the quality of the materials, it's fine, the price is quite high, but safety is non-negotiable factor in construction, right? Fine, we have standard operating, standard organization of Nigeria, who have decided the responsibility of ensuring that the quality of materials for construction activities are approved. But it will interest you to know that there are so many standard operating procedure materials or products that didn't even stand the test of time. So what I will also encourage most developers to embrace is to also subject some of these materials, particularly reinforcement materials, to some laboratory tests, just to be sure that they could stand the test of time, and they are standard, worthy to use for construction purpose.
If more mortgage facilities with an average of at least 20 to 25-year tenors at the rate of about 5% per annum becomes available, well, the demand of housing in the country would also increase significantly. Now, this would also lead to increased fund for the real estate sector, and as such, developers would also start to build more houses. Mortgage companies would grow bigger, possibly from the acquisition of stakes in them by big PFAs, and consequently, the insurance sector would also gain too. All houses under mortgage will be insured. But do you see or share in this sentiment? And why is it difficult to just contextualize working models?
Right. I share that sentiment, and I share the view. Absolutely correct. In most of the developed world where this is practical, when we have this display in practical terms, they have a system, right? So they have a system that makes mortgage work. In this part of the world, Nigeria to be precise, we do not have system that encourages that. Fine, CBN has made an effort to reduce the interest rate and thereby elongating the repayment period. A good one. However, don't forget we have a purchasing power problem. The number of unemployment and underemployment is a major factor, and non-employment, underemployment, and job security. If you're going to have a mortgage that work, a mortgage system that work, people must be able to fund their mortgage. In this part of the world, you are not sure you can sustain your job to pay your mortgage. You can be out of job, in no time. A gross number of people are underemployed, while majority are even or unemployed. So how do you expect a mortgage to work in such? We have a problem with the system. So we need to get that right. And I also feel our database, also to a large extent, need to be improved on. If you're going to have a mortgage facility, even if we resolve the problem of purchasing power, mortgage has to be for people who, if I have a job that could pay my mortgage, over the period of time, and all of a sudden, for some reasons, I have a slash in salary, I no longer can meet my basic needs. It becomes difficult. And so that means you are going after mortgage, and right behind you, a foreclosure is coming because of the inability to service my mortgage. So the system has to be looked into. Of course, the bureaucracy also is a major challenge, right? For example, the simplest will have been the NHA, National Housing Fund. But I can tell you, 100 people that have made attempts to get NHA, I doubt if 5% of them have actually been able to access that fund because of unnecessary bureaucracy, unnecessary policy, difficulty. So So for a logic system to work in this part of the way out of our housing, this menace, right? The way out of the menace of the housing deficit is to have a robust, practical mortgage system that works.
Let's now talk about the perceived insecurity in the land tenure system. The bureaucracy involved in land acquisition and the perfection of title poses a considerable difficulty to effective housing delivery, especially in most urban areas.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. I mean, the modern land grabbing in the name of government acquisition being practiced by most governments in Nigerian state is a major challenge to development. The real worth of a property is not the land, but the development on the land. But when the government is also interested in the business of housing solution without creating an enabling environment for the key players to make it work, or embracing public-private partnership to get the job done and bridge the gap of the housing deficit we have in Nigeria, it becomes difficult to realize that dream. Now, I already mentioned the bureaucracy that plays within that sector, particularly towards titling, towards perfecting your documents, and all of it's a major concern. You know, government should have a detailed turnaround time for document process, and the standard operating procedure should be communicated to all developers or stakeholders.
Now, there is an extremely low level of awareness of mortgage facilities, their benefits and services provided. What more do you think we can do in the area of sensitization? Because that's critical, irrespective of the individual advertising campaigns for gains, beyond making profit or just gains, the role of sensitization.
Absolutely. Right. Shelter is considered to be one of the basic needs of life as being taught in elementary science. You know, however, the sensitization drive or knowledge base of an average Nigerian about real estate is considered to be very poor, right? Owing to few things. Of course, number one, the profit maximization drive of most developers make it almost impossible for an individual. Some people have counted themselves out, you know, to be a homeowner in Nigeria because they feel they can afford it. And some other schemes that are available as initiative by government, one of such is NHM. The sensitization is also very poor. An average Nigerian are not even aware about what NHF stands for. So I feel the sensitization about the housing for all possibility in the real sense is quite poor, and the government and private sector can do more.
And now, wrapping up our conversation, what about what do you see in terms of new opportunities? Do you think would have much more opportunities springing up for the real estate sector in Nigeria? What's your forecast?
The opportunities springing up in the real estate sector in Nigeria will be, among others, a lot of people are now embracing collaboration. A lot of developers are coming together, to birth new ideas. So that for me is a welcoming idea. We have a lot of major developers coming together to get so many things done. Beyond that, the millennials, which are they are the base of the pyramid, and that's where we have the majority. Their needs are also tailored made. So we're having the springs of a lot of cute apartments, like a bedroom apartments, two-bedroom apartments, even studio apartments, solely targeted towards these millennials. It's a very welcoming initiative, and we have a lot of apartments springing up. And another one that, if regulated and well done, the site and service initiative is also a fantastic one. Because of the poor purchasing power, people are given the room to own a land first, and they are given a payment structure to pay over a period of time. Then after that, some smart developers also give them an opportunity to now realize their dream of becoming a homeowner. Moving them from being a landowner to a homeowner, going through some fantastic initiatives.
Thank you very much for your contribution on the show today, Kunle Adeyemi, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Homes Limited. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
We appreciate that, sir.
Well, just before we let you go now, I'll leave you with some graphic details of the commodities market. We have some fresh reports from the National Bureau of Statistics. And that's it on this edition of Business Week. Many thanks for watching so far. Do enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm David Alabi. Bye for now.